everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. This week's vlog is going to be a list of my favourite 15 running books, which you can also listen to as audiobooks to keep you company on the run. Obviously I'm not doing very much running at the moment, but I'm still powering through a whole host of audiobooks, and I've realised just how many I've listened to. I mean, it must be around 20 plus audiobooks that I've listened to whilst running, and several other that I have read the actual books of, and I am loving it because it means that you can kind of have various different books on the go, and also it keeps you sort of company as you run. I tend not to listen to music because, especially when I'm trying to do an easy run, you know, a good song can come on and I just end up absolutely like pacing down the road, which is definitely not what you need to be doing when you're trying to take it easy. This is in no particular order. I kind of just wrote them down as I remembered them, and I'm going to give you a tiny little synopsis as well, but nothing major, just so that we get through the 15 in decent amount of time. So the first book is Endure by Alex Hutchinson. This is probably one of my favourite books of all time. It's a mix of science as well as Alex Hutchinson's own experiences of running, and it's about the limits of human endurance and how they are much more up here than they are actually in our body. So the subline is exploring the curious limits of human endurance, and it's a little bit sciencey, but nothing that most people can't understand, and I found that just absolutely fascinating. The second one is Training for the Uphill Athlete by Steve House, Killian Jornet and Scott Johnson, and this is a training guide. So it's not really a story, but it has all this information in it about how to train, how not to train, nutrition, all this kind of stuff from some of the world's best runners and coaches. The only downside of this is that in the actual book they have a lot of graphs and visuals as well, which can help you to understand what they're saying, which obviously you don't have when you're listening to the audiobook, but I believe some of them you can look up on their website, and if you are actually interested you can go and check that out. But otherwise I listened to the audiobook version of this and I found it relatively easy to understand, and I didn't really need the graphs. I kind of knew what they were talking about without. The next one is Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. This is about the Tarahumara tribe in Mexico, and also about barefoot running and their nutrition and all this kind of stuff. It's just an incredible story. I love these books that kind of have a historical element but are also just really, really well written, and I think Christopher McDougall is one of the best writers out there. So I'd thoroughly recommend listening to this. It's such a cult classic. Everyone has read it probably already, but I thought I'd add it on here just in case you haven't. Eat and Run by Scott Jurek. Most of you will know Scott Jurek is an incredible endurance athlete. He's also a vegan, and this book is about his journey into running from things like cross-country skiing and how he became one of the world's best endurance athletes, and it also has various recipes and talks a little bit about a more plant-based diet, but it's not, you know, preachy or anything like that. I think it's an amazing story, and it's got also lots of really good recipes in it. Good for a Girl by Lauren Fleshman. I loved this, and I really do think that everyone should listen to or read this book. I think it's really important. It basically highlights her journey in the world of track and field in the US, and how the system is sort of set up by men for boys, and to bring up boys into being incredible athletes, which it does really well, but how that can kind of fail women and girls because we are not built the same. And when you go through puberty and stuff, lots of things happen that mean that women's trajectory into sports is not the same as a man's trajectory would be. And it's really, really well written. It kind of highlights a lot of the issues, but also talks about her story, and I think that's really interesting. It also talks about the abundance of things like eating disorders in the world of track and field and endurance running, but kind of from a more American perspective, although obviously it's still fairly prevalent across here. But yeah, really recommend listening to that. I think everyone needs to hear it, especially if you came from a track and field background or if you have a kid who is doing that sort of thing. The next one is called Eat, Sweat, Play by Anna Kessel. It is on a similar subject. It's about the barriers facing women and girls getting into sports, and especially staying in sports, for example, when you have kids. Anna Kessel used to be the sports editor for The Telegraph, I think, and she writes amazingly about this topic. And again, I think this is a book that really everyone should read. Even as a woman growing up, I did not realise all the barriers that I was facing, or that people in general are facing getting into sports, and kind of maintaining that through adulthood as well. It's really well written. I think everyone should read this one. The next one is an absolute cult classic that probably a lot of you have already read, but it is Feet in the Clouds by Richard Asquith. This is about the history of fell running, as well as the author's journey into trying to get into fell running and his journey towards doing the Bob Graham round. I love this. I think it's a really, really well written book and quite funny. And if you are interested in the history of fell running, I mean, from like the Lake District, if you are British, I think it's a very, very British book. But yeah, I just absolutely loved it, and it is such a cult classic. I think most people would have already read it. The next one is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is such a beautiful book. I think he's an amazing writer. It just talks about Murakami's running journey. It's kind of about himself and looking back. It's at times funny, at times it's quite sad and poignant. I just think it's so beautifully written. It's definitely a must read. The next is The Rise of the Ultra Runner by Adharanam Finn. I absolutely adore this book because it is talking about why doing a marathon is no longer enough, why so many people are going into the crazy world of ultra marathons, where that started, where it's going, who's doing it, kind of what mental problems we've all got to be doing this sport. But I think it's a really, really lovely book. And it also talks about the author's own journey into getting into ultra marathons. Running with Sherman by Christopher McDougall. Like I said earlier, I think McDougall is one of the best writers out there, and he's written this book called Running with Sherman, which is about his rescue donkey. He rescued a donkey, and obviously donkeys are incredibly intelligent animals and it needed a job, and it's about him getting into running with the donkey. It's really funny, it's really heartwarming. I just absolutely adored this book. Solo by Jenny Tough. This is one of the more recent ones I've listened to, and it is about Jenny Tough, who she's an endurance athlete, an adventurer, she's a cyclist, she's an ultramarathon runner. It's about her traveling solo and unsupported, running across 6 mountain ranges in 6 different continents, and it kind of just documents her journey through each of those mountain ranges. It did make me infuriated at times because of the barriers that she faced as a single kind of unsupported woman just out there by herself, but it is beautifully written, absolutely incredible and inspirational, and I gotta say, it didn't necessarily make me want to go out and do a solo unsupported adventure, but it definitely did make me want to go out there and sort of push my boundaries a little bit more than I do at the moment, and it was just really, really inspirational. She's an incredible woman, and I saw a talk by her as well recently, and yeah, she's just an amazing woman. Out and Back by Hilary Allen. This was out, I think, quite recently, and is the story of ultra runner and sky runner Hilary Allen's journey back from a really life-threatening injury that she got during a sky race in, I think, Norway, where she fell and broke 14 bones in her body and very, very, very nearly died. But it's such an amazing story, her journey back from all of this, and talks about not just the physicality of it, but also like the mental side of it. Like, how do you get back from that when your brain is like, you know, trying to protect you and you've had this horrible injury? How do you kind of encourage your body back into it? And I just think, oh, she's incredible. The next one is Running While Black by Alison Mariella Desir, and I listened to this one really recently and I spoke about it on a recent vlog. This is about Desir's journey into running and how running saved her life, and how also running historically has been a very white male dominated sport. I think this is such an important book for everyone to read, and it was a really good audiobook as well. It kind of flowed really well as I was running around, so thoroughly recommend this one. The next one is Pants of Perspective by Anna McNuff. Anna McNuff has done a lot of books. There's Barefoot Britain, which I've literally just finished. There's Pants Perspective, which is about her journey along the Tarara Trail in New Zealand and how she was doing that all, again, solo and unsupported. And they're all really friendly, approachable books. You know, Jenny Tough is talking about some really serious kind of stuff, and it's very, like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's a lot more like no frills, whereas Anna McNuff, she is super light-hearted, super friendly, super chatty, and I think it appeals to a slightly different audience, but it is really lovely to listen to. It is very kind of wholesome and just lovely. So if you think that you aren't built to do these kind of adventures, definitely go and listen to some of her books, because, you know, she's not an Olympian, although apparently both of her parents are. So she's just like a normal person who's decided to take on these incredible adventures, and she's got a lot of books, but the one that I liked the most was The Panther Perspective, which is about the Tarara Trail in New Zealand, and it makes me really want to go and visit. And last but definitely not least is the one that I'm listening to at the moment, which is called Natural Born Heroes. This is by Christopher McDougall and a little bit different to the other books because it's kind of a historical, not a novel, it's a true story, but it's historical rather than about running specifically. It's about these poets and like architects who were on the island of Crete in World War II and who were kind of part of the resistance against Hitler in World War II, and it's kind of tapping into this ancient art of heroism, living off the land. Rather than using muscles, you're using your fascia to kind of get around the place, so it's really minimally taxing for the body, and it's really interesting. I've kind of only just started listening to it, but it dots around from the story to science to other people's experiences, and I really love it. If you're interested in history and interested in running and sports and athletics, I think this is definitely one that you should listen to. So I hope you enjoyed this vlog, nice and short for today. I'd love to hear if there are any other audiobooks or books that you have listened to about running that you absolutely love and that I've missed off this list. I'm sure there will be plenty. There are lots of books that I've read in book form that I always forget that I've read because I get all of my books on Audible, which means that I have like a long list of all the ones that I've listened to, but when I've actually read them, they just go back in the bookshelf and then I forget about them forever. So I will probably have forgotten some, so do let me know, and let me know if you've listened to any of these or read any of these and enjoy them and which one's your favourite as well. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. I will be back hopefully next week with some gym stuff and possibly getting back into running a little bit. If I am, I will make sure to let you guys know, and it will be on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.